Welcome, loving selected ones. When the darkness disappears for you and nothing appears, it indicates you were never on the menu. You were the one who flipped the table. Allow that to settle. Because what we are going to share is not a superstition. It is spiritual physics. There is a reason the spells did not work. The rites crumbled, and the candles flickered out. Instead of igniting, they spilled goat blood and awoke to nosebleeds. They chanted at midnight, and your laughter echoed in their heads like a ringtone from hell. You were not only shielded, but also inaccessible. And they are just now discovering they were attempting to condemn someone who does not even exist in their reality. Here is the truth. When you are cosmically programmed, each ritual directed against you is a boomerang with a grudge. And while they believed they were plotting your demise, all they did was support your advancement. Science now supports this claim as well. Did you know that your body produces quantifiable electromagnetic frequencies that may influence, reject, or absorb energy fields from other humans? What happens when your soul's frequency is so high that it cannot absorb energy? It reflects it like a polished mirror facing the sun. That's you. The one who walks through curses like it's just Monday. The one they attempted to bind, but ended up trapped in the same cycle they created for you. And, to be honest, they actually believed some sage smoke, a chicken bone, and a magic from the dark web was about to destroy a soul formed in heavenly fire. Please grab your popcorn, for whatever they conjured is now pursuing them. And this episode, it's called Their Rituals and Spells Turned into Boomerangs. Because you are not only protected, but also inaccessible. Let's get to it. Number 1, you were not just protected. You were pre-programmed for rejection by darkness. You were never just protected. You were pre-coded to be untouchable before you entered this lifetime. Your soul was encrypted with divine software that cannot be hacked, controlled, or hijacked by negative energy. That's why their rituals failed. Not because you were fortunate, not because you lighted a white candle on time, but because your energy physically repels interference. Curses, hexes, spells, jealousy, and psychic assaults are not designed to be received by your spirit, since their frequencies do not match. All of it bounces off since your soul's architecture prevents illegal downloading. People believe that protection entails being surrounded by angels or coated in holy oil. That is adorable, but the reality goes deeper. You were programmed with an automatic deflect mechanism. Do you know how some computers are so sophisticated that viruses cannot operate on them? That's you. Except in this situation, the infection is envy, malicious purpose, ancestral bondage, and manipulation. And every time they attempt to connect to you, they get a system error. That's why some of them became depressed after toying with your energy. That's why they began seeing shadows in their room or hearing sounds they couldn't explain when they touched the incorrect frequency and were scorched by their own access attempt. They believed you were vulnerable because you were calm, courteous, and did not react, but you didn't have to respond. Your soul was packed with a spiritual boomerang. They unintentionally put themselves up for a trap by sending the message. You were not only protected, you were wired with spiritual defenses that no dock worker, no matter how experienced, could overcome. You were born with a signature designed to reject darkness. You do not absorb poison. You've exposed it. And when they attempted to break through, their own aspirations became their punishment. They were not fighting you. They were struggling against the heavenly code that rendered you inaccessible. And in that struggle, they had no chance. Number 2, the spells strike you like rubber since you do not exist in their frequency range. They continued casting spells, curses, and spiritual assaults your way, expecting mayhem to overwhelm you like a tidal wave. But they didn't grasp this. You do not exist in the same frequency as they do, and that is why nothing landed. Their energy was swinging wildly in the dark, attempting to hit something that was never there in the room. You live on an other plane, one that their rituals and brains cannot fathom. You aren't concealing. You're just vibrating so high that their low-level methods cannot detect or touch you. That's why whenever they attempted to bind or block you, something strange occurred. The spell failed. Their lives began to fall apart. Their own imaginations had turned against them. It was not a case of wizardry gone wrong. It was spiritual physics. They were attempting to fire arrows in a realm where gravity operated differently. When you are out of frequency range, whatever energy they transmit is gone. Because energy cannot be lost, it always returns to its source. That is why it constantly strikes them. They are not just failing. They are causing their own demise with each step. They believed you were a frequent target. They assumed you were on the same energy playing field. They were unaware that you had risen beyond their level. You aren't inaccessible because you are hiding. You are inaccessible because your energy field lacks the gateway they are seeking for. They don't even have the proper keys. They keep casting, chanting, and fretting, hoping that something would finally break through. But you are no longer on this spiritual map. You have upgraded to coordinates. Their rituals do not cover. They sent gloom into an empty room in the hopes of catching a ghost. Meanwhile, you lived your life unaffected, uncaring, and exalted. They believed they were axing you, but they were really depleting themselves in a spiritual echo chamber. Every spell they cast became louder, sharper, and more chaotic. Not because you fought back, but because they had no idea who they were playing with. You didn't ignore them. You were merely inaccessible by design. Number 3, their rituals have become poisonous due to a feedback cycle. They do not comprehend. People believe rituals are just theatrical displays. Candles, chanting, and moonlight. Perhaps some unusual things and murmurs. But behind all of that, rituals are contracts. They're energy transfers. When someone engages in a ritual with the purpose to hurt, they are selling their own spiritual energy as a kind of payment. That energy has to go someplace. And when it fails to reach its intended recipient because they are spiritually inaccessible, that energy does not evaporate. It has no option except to return to its source. Not softly, not quietly, but like a boomerang honed by failure. This is what occurred when they targeted you. Their rituals didn't just fail. They became poisoned. Not because the spell was ineffective, but because the energy had no place to fall. It began eating the sole vessel available, the individual who sent it. That is the portion they did not grasp. You are not merely protected. Your energy field does not even interact with lesser frequencies. So when someone does you injury and you do not absorb it, they have essentially poured poison into a closed system. They end up drinking what they brewed every time they light a candle with hatred in their hearts and say your name in a terrible ritual. They were putting energy into an infinite cycle, and such loops feed on their originator. That is why they began to decay emotionally, physically, and intellectually, since the energy they sent had to do something. With nowhere else to go, it fed on them. Slowly. Slow, and unpleasant. They believed they were directing spiritual traffic, sending negative energy your way, and taking control of results. They didn't know that without your involvement, there is no way for their ritual to proceed. You never signed the contract. You never opened the gate. In the spiritual sphere, this makes all the difference. You became the mirror, and they became the victims of their own intentions, not because you opposed them, but because their energy could not reach you. So it turned around and devoured them alive. Number 4, you are not an opponent in that game. You're a bug that disrupts their whole system. They imagined they were playing spiritual chess. They had their pawns, rituals, timing, and steps all planned out. They followed the directions. Burn this at midnight and repeat this sentence for 9 days. Speak your name over a container, doll, or flame. Everything appeared to go as planned until it didn't. Because when they directed their energies toward you, something unusual occurred. The system malfunctioned. You were not an opponent. A single line of code might be used to research, track, or outwit you. They failed to account for the unexplained inaccuracy that disrupted the whole calculation. Curses and dark rituals are not only based on intention. They follow a very particular set of spiritual principles. Laws related to fear, doubt, guilt, trauma, and emotional fragility. These energies operate as open ports, allowing manipulation to occur. However, when someone works outside of that framework, as you do, the whole process fails. Your spirit does not react to fear in the same manner. Your energy does not process shame in the same manner. You do not have the same flaws in your foundation. You've gone through the fire and come out with a legible code. You are something the dark arts cannot quantify, which scares them more than your power. You're unpredictable. Unpredictability is a powerful tool in spiritual battle. When they attempted to tie you, the energy backfired. Not because they were weak, but because their system was based on rules you no longer follow. You have outgrown the fear matrix. You do not feed them, you starve them. And in a world where everything requires spiritual fuel, you were the one soul that broke the engine. They did not lose the war because they incorrectly cast a spell. They lost because they directed it at someone who no longer follows worldly rules. You are not the boss fighting at the conclusion of the level. You are the bug in the game itself. And every time they come for you, their software fails again. Number 5. Your DNA has a light signal that shines through their dark systems. Most individuals do not aware that spiritual assaults are more than merely symbolic gestures. They are coded frequencies. When someone casts a spell or conducts a ritual, they are essentially programming a vibration. That frequency is intended to resonate with something inside the target, such as a vulnerability, a hurt, or an insecurity, and draw it in. This is how it acquires access. It is not random. It is computed. It is an energy-based algorithm. But here's where things go wrong for them when it comes to you. Your DNA is not ordinary. You are not just shielded by some external force. Your whole spiritual constitution was enhanced before you were born. Your soul underwent a complex procedure, a kind of divine genetic alteration that altered your spiritual code. So when their ritual attempts to latch onto your frequency, it fails to discover an entrance point. It detects resistance, but not passive resistance. Burning light at such a high and pure frequency. It does not absorb darkness. It scrambles it. The enchantment doesn't just bounce off. It melts. When it contacts your light signature, it starts to unravel the vibration. They expended time, energy, and wrath. The building gets corrupted. It's like hurling a virus at a solar-powered firewall. Not only is it stopped, but it also eliminates the source from whence it originated. That is why they get ill after targeting you. That is why they are experiencing mental instability. Their rituals become unsteady in your presence. Tools cease operating. Their incantations ring out, and their dreams get darker and more chaotic, since the software they're running was never intended to be tested against a soul like yours. You don't battle the darkness. You override it. And not because you're trying. Simply living in your actual frequency generates a spiritual code that invalidates theirs. You are not exempt because you are fortunate. You're immune since your soul has a light sequence that reveals every evil mechanism it encounters. You are more than simply an inaccessible target. You are the reason the system crashed. They are unable to survive. Number 6. They misunderstood your quiet for weakness. However, you were working from an inaccessible axis. They observed you remain silent. You did not react, flinch, or break down as they expected. So they believed that indicated the spell was effective, that you were too exhausted to be afraid, spiritually paralyzed, and react. But they misinterpreted everything. What seemed to be quiet was really not fear. It was power. It was the kind of power that does not need to be announced since it does not even appear on the same radar as their strikes. They assumed you weren't fighting back since you didn't throw anything in response. But how can you resist something that has never touched you? You were not frozen. You were unscathed. While they were busy tossing mud and darkness, you were functioning from such a high, secure level that their rituals never even registered on your system. Your silence was not surrender. It was the effect of being on an axis that they couldn't find, much alone reach. You weren't just calm. You were out of grasp. You were managing your reality from a position of authority that they couldn't reach. This is what made you dangerous to them. Non-engagement, rather than fury or retaliation. You did not spiral, react, or reply. That's what broke the plan wide open. Everything they cast was designed to evoke emotion, terror, and revenge. When they received nothing back, their energy had nowhere to go. That was when things turned against them. They were playing a game of spiritual tag while you were off-grid and not even on the same pitch. They anticipated to prick a wound and elicit a response. But you didn't feel it. Not because you are immune to suffering, but because your soul is stationed in a location where their rituals are not permitted. They can chant, yell, swear, and start fires. However, without access, all their efforts become background noise. You were not concealing. You were not afraid. You were just working above the battlefield. They mistook your silence for loss, while in truth, it indicated they were never even near. Number 7. You are not protected by spirits. You are the spirit. They should never have challenged. They really felt they were up against simply another person, someone with a kind heart, some luck, and maybe a few guardian spirits on watch. But the reality is considerably more terrifying than they could have anticipated. You aren't only being protected by heavenly powers. You are the divine force. You didn't invoke ancestral power. You're the ancestor. You aren't dependent on angels. You remember being one. That was their mistake. They thought they were dealing with someone ordinary while they were really provoking an old presence disguised as contemporary. You've trod this world before, in bodies long lost under the clouds and no longer remembered in prior lifetimes. You commanded the identical forces they're now attempting to influence. They attempted to hex a creature who once held court in heavenly planes they hardly comprehend. They lighted candles and recited names, unaware that the soul they were seeking now governs the spirits they invoke. This is why nothing works. That is why their rituals seem stagnant when directed at you. Because attempting spiritual warfare against the soul of your rank is not only rude, but also cosmically foolish. It is like to a shadow attempting to block out the light. Your entire presence brings authority that transcends dark mechanics. Your aura communicates in a language ancient than any spell they've ever studied. The cosmos does not just protect you because you are selected. It remembers you. And each effort they make against you creates a ripple in that memory. Not in your favor, but under your direction. That is why their lives are disintegrating. That is why they are surrounded by turmoil after attempting to target you. They poked a sleeping god. They ridiculed a general in disguise. And they degraded an ancient soul who had already paid their karmic debt. Someone who now walks with clearance, position, and spiritual immunity. You were not protected by anything external. You were avenged by your own discarded heritage. And in worlds where truth resonates louder than sound, that heritage sounds like thunder. Number 8. They couldn't bind you since your soul exists in numerous places at once. They attempted to trap you with earthbound instruments, sigils, candles, whispered curses, and tangible symbols because they felt your power was limited. They believed you existed in a single location, shape, and frequency that they could capture. But they never thought that your soul has never been limited to this world. You don't just stroll across this realm. You're echoing across numerous. You are a multidimensional entity, and your essence is not limited to a single level. That's why nothing they tried ever stuck. They were attempting to capture water with thread, and you were never just water to begin with. You existed simultaneously as vapor, mist, ocean, and cloud. You do not exist in a single state. While casting magic in this third-dimensional world, your awareness spills into areas others can't even identify. You are concurrently engaged in the fourth, fifth, and beyond. Your dreams are not dreams. These are visits. Your intuition isn't just a guess. It is a remembrance from a timeline that never perished. You're connected to light that bends beyond worlds. That's why nothing can stop you. They're attempting to contain something that isn't even completely present. Every time they attempted to bind you, whether via ritual or intention, they merely addressed a portion of your existence. The rest of you had already moved, already developed, already moved on. Their spell may have landed on the physical you, but the true you has already diverted the signal to a higher frequency. They were constantly many dimensions behind, so they never had a chance. Their magic demands that you be static, but you are naturally active, fluid, expansive, and fractal. You are not merely protected, you are stretched out. That's what makes them furious. They can't discover the you who has your power since it isn't concentrated in one location. It is woven across light, time, and worlds. To tie someone like you, they must control reality itself, yet they cannot control their own thoughts. You are not only able to unbind double, but also unload. Number 9. The ceremonies failed because they were not permitted to utter your name. They assumed speaking your name was innocuous. This is only part of the ceremony. It's only a word, a vibration. But they had no notion that in the spiritual sphere, names are more than simply identifiers. They are keys. These are codes. Speaking a name with purpose is similar to obtaining a spiritual signature. And when they uttered your words without permission, rank, or clearance, they didn't just overstep. They perpetrated spiritual deception. You're not a normal person. Your name has weight beyond this plane. It is imprinted with lifetimes of power, cosmic authority, and divine agreements. When they employed it in their ceremonies, they were not just talking into the smoke. They were seeking to seize something precious from the upper worlds. This is similar to forging a heavenly signature. Up there, forgery does not just backfire. It prompts judgment. Not the type you can plead your way out of. Not the type that can be reversed with another spell. We're discussing cosmic prosecution. That is why their lives began to fall apart once they attempted to utilize your name. The illness, the perplexity, the unexpected bad luck, the emotional turmoil. It wasn't negative karma in the general sense. It was a result. Their deeds triggered alarms in realms they didn't even believe in, since spiritual systems do not work just on intention. They operate with authority. They had none. They believed they could play God with your energy, but your energy reports straight to the source, and the source does not toy with identity theft. When they attempted to channel you, bind you, or distort your course using your name, they invoked a law they couldn't break. Spiritual impersonation is treason. You didn't need to raise a finger. You didn't have to say anything. Your name defended itself because it is more than simply a name. It was a live seal. And when they messed with the seal, they weren't just performing a spell. They were signing the judgment. Number 10. They utilized blood and fire. But you were hidden in an aspect that they couldn't control. Ether. They followed historical designs and conventional ways of dark practice. They used fire to destroy, water for emotional manipulation, earth to anchor their goals, and blood to complete the spell. These elements have traditionally been used in ancient ceremonies because they are potent conduits. But the one thing they couldn't explain, and the reason all of their attempts failed, is that you are not bound by the 4 classical components. Like most souls, you're anchored in ether. The 5th element is one that people cannot touch, command, or even completely comprehend. Ether isn't solid, tangible, or visible. It is the combination of spirit, space, and heavenly wisdom. It is the world of prophecy, spiritual vision, and soul presence. And this is what renders you invisible to dark practitioners. You do not resonate at the level where their rituals function. You do not share the same frequency as their tools. They can burn candles, draw sigils, and bleed blood, but none of it will attach to you since their components are limited by form. But you live in the formlessness of us. You aren't concealing. You are absolutely inaccessible. They reached into the darkness to locate you, but their hands merely penetrated the shadows. They came into contact with something sharp while groping blindly. The limits of your hidden power. Not because you assaulted, but because your energy is self-protecting like an ether. It does not need defense. It does not need strategy. It just doesn't appear on their map. You are the unreadable page in their spellbook. The quiet gap between their chances, the presence they sense but cannot pinpoint. They believed they were calling strength, but they were really cutting themselves on a force they had no right to approach since ether does not fight. It dissolves. It indicates that it makes all evil endeavors irrelevant. That's why you were unharmed. You were not only protected, you were dimensionally far, shrouded in the one element that cannot be altered. That made you invincible. A number. You function under sovereign law. That indicates a breakdown under your control. You don't play by the same rules as everyone else. While most souls get engrossed in karma, energy debts, or occult agreements, contracts written and signed in realms they scarcely comprehend, you function under a greater law, sovereign law, divine sovereignty. This isn't simply some fancy term. It is a spiritual truth that elevates you beyond all contracts, agreements, and binding forces that their spells attempt to impose. They attempt to lock you in a loop of cause and effect, assuming that karma will do the heavy job. They attempt to claim you under shadow contracts, expecting spiritual shackles to bind you down. But your soul's structure trumps all of that. You are a free agent in the cosmic court. There are no judges above your own sovereign determination. The ceremonies may have worked within the narrow restrictions that they followed, but such rules do not apply in your jurisdiction. Their lawsuit gets dismissed before it even starts. It's like turning up to a high court with fake documents from a local tribunal. The court examines the evidence, recognizes the absence of authority, and throws the entire thing out. That's what happens whenever they attempt to control you. Their achievement is undermined by the power you have just by being who you are. You don't simply avoid their rituals, you eliminate their validity. This sovereignty implies that you are your own legislator and judge. You owe no fealty to light or shadow contracts since you are beyond their boundaries. Your spirit has intrinsic power that cannot be denied or overcome. The cosmic court regards your name as untouchable, your rights as irreversible, and your authority as ultimate. So, although they spend time creating spells and curses based on worldly rules, your soul's constitution makes their attempts invalid, meaningless, and comically ineffectual. Their legal papers are spiritual frauds, and you are the law that renders them invalid. They are playing checkers on a board, and you are the grandmaster, altering the rules. A number. They intended to ruin you. Unaware of their intentions, the tranquility that guided your blessings. They put all of their venom into attempting to shatter you, believing that every cruel remark, cursing ritual, and wicked scheme would be the arrow that finally struck its target. They failed to see that in the spiritual realm, purpose operates differently. Intent is more than simply energy being put out mindlessly. It's a kind of cosmic GPS, a navigation system that charts the path for your soul's journey. And most individuals are unaware of how their soul is wired. It takes hardship, flips it inside out, and utilizes it to steer you along the right road. So, while they were obsessed with harming you, their negative attention became a light, directing you to your own blessings. Their assaults were not obstacles. They served as signposts. Every effort they made to bring you down resulted in critical data for your next breakthrough. It's as if they gave you the blueprint for your success, wrapped in their hate. This isn't some trite, positive thinking cliche. It's the ugly, hardwired reality about how your spirit works. You have been programmed, whether by divine design or cosmic need, to reverse engineer all kinds of negativity. Their passion with you made them inadvertent builders of your success. The more they focused on breaking you, the more obvious your route became. The force that was designed to hurt you was repurposed to help you flourish. They believed they were hurling stones to destroy you, yet those stones created the foundation of your kingdom. Their goal was not just misguided. It was taken over by your destiny. So now people see you as stronger, smarter, more honest, and competent. They don't understand they've been leading you there all along. Their hatred was not the weapon they wished for. The tranquility kept you on track. A number. The more they conjured, the more they activated your latent abilities. Their ceremonies were designed to shatter you, bending your soul till it broke. In reality, however, the reverse occurred. Every spell they cast, every terrible word they said added pressure that did not break you. It fortified you in the same way that ancient weightlifting does. The more difficulty you encountered, the more muscle your soul developed. Their efforts to undermine you were the catalyst for your development. Every attack worked like a resistance band, pulling you tighter, stretching your limits, and forcing dormant parts of you to awaken. Parts of your soul that had been quiet, hidden, or undeveloped began flexing their strength, and curses meant to cage you became triggers that unlocked your hidden powers. They had no idea that their efforts to capture or control you were really your waking ritual. This is the cruel irony of cursing a chosen one. You redirect their onslaught on itself. Instead of depleting your vitality, dark rituals charge your spiritual batteries. Every evil desire adds gasoline to the fire inside you. They do not diminish you. Rather, they polish and forge you into something sharper and more powerful. They wanted to see you shattered. They did, however, experience a real-time soul awakening. Their hate and black magic were like a wake-up call, jolting you out of slumber and into your full potential. The harder they pushed, the stronger you became. Their rituals didn't just fail. They gave you access to hitherto unimaginable heights of power. So the next time they attempt to throw a shadow over you, remember this. Their darkness is not your adversary. It is the spark that ignites the fire inside. Their onslaught was never meant to destroy. It was about an unexpected awakening. No, they weren't simply casting spells. They were signing their own expiration date. When they used those rites against you, it wasn't a random effort to disrupt your life. They were dealing with powers considerably greater than they realized. They weren't just casting spells out into the abyss. They were tampering with the holy, divine architecture that keeps the cosmos in balance. And you bear a divine mandate, a purpose woven into the very fabric of reality, making you impervious to conventional black magic. They didn't comprehend that messing with someone like you was more than simply risky. It is spiritual treason. It's like defying the norms of the cosmic order and ripping apart the fabric of reality itself. When they interfered with your route, they were not only attempting to alter your life, but also hacking into the universe's operating system. And systems like that have fail-safes and punishments. The turmoil, malfunctions, and unexpected disasters they experienced after targeting you. It wasn't about petty vengeance or chance. It was cosmic correction kicking in, setting things right at a level beyond our comprehension. Their lives are falling. It wasn't the universe being cruel, it was the system, recalibrating, eliminating corruption, and restoring equilibrium. They believed they could tamper with you and escape unharmed. However, they were unaware of the consequences of their conduct. Every ceremony performed, every curse imposed on you was like signing a contract with an expiration date, one that concluded with their own demise. Their failure is not a coincidence. It's the inevitable result of breaching a boundary that was never theirs to cross. So, while they were attempting to harm you, they were inadvertently starting the clock on their own demise. Their spiritual bankruptcy was written the minute they decided to interfere with a divine purpose. The cosmos does not forget or forgive such treachery. It rectified quickly and forcefully. The fact is obvious. Their rites did not weaken you. They unwound themselves. Every effort to control, bind, or destroy you exposed the depths of your invincible nature. You live beyond their grasp, founded on sovereignty and authority. They cannot understand or break. That evil spell proved their downfall because they dared to confront a power much larger than themselves. A force that is not only shielded, but completely inaccessible. This is not simply about survival. It is an achievement on a cosmic scale. So, while they faltered in the shadows, they attempted to put you in the bright light of your own destiny, unshaken and unstoppable. They set traps, but you were never their victim. You are an endless mystery, beyond their rights, beyond their grasp, and always sovereign. If this message spoke to you and you're ready to step into your full power, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the truth that sets you free. Like this video to show your strength. Please leave a comment with your experience or observations, and share it with others who need to hear this profound awakening. We ascend above limitations, indestructible, unstoppable, and unashamedly sovereign. God bless you.